All right, Ryan, you can take it from there.
Welcome, everyone. So this is the ACE relationship community, and I am one of the co-hosts, Ryan, and with me is criminologist Terrence. And we do this we have been doing it on a weekly basis. Recently, we've been doing it on a bi-weekly basis. So I'm going to tell you just a little bit about myself, and then Terrence will tell you a little bit about him, and we'll go right into what we've prepared for you today. So to give you a little bit of a background, uh, I'm relationship engineer Ryan, and mainly what I focus on is understanding from a very procedural perspective how we can, with intention, with planning, with effort, build long-lasting, sustainable relationships. And when things may not be going well, help you understand why and how we can jump back from it. So if anyone's thinking, how do I get married? Or, maybe my current relationship isn't working out well, or how do I get to the next step within 6 months, within a year? Uh, I'm your guy. I really look on how to build systems, relationships from the ground up and help you evaluate where they're going wrong. So I bring my experience from the electrical engineering and business world, as well as my own personal experience in how I've helped other people get married, find their wives, evaluate who they're going to marry, as well as some of my own personal experience from my own marriage. And so I come from a very engineering background along with my own practical results. And I work a lot with Terrence because of his own expertise in what he's done, where he comes from a slightly different angle. So as you see, his name is Criminologist Terrence. So Terrence, what have you done?
Well, I study crime. I study the techniques that criminals and manipulators do. I've been doing that for a little bit over 10 years. I started doing that for the government, specializing in child crimes against children and human trafficking. And then I started looking at the private sector. And a lot of the techniques people use might not be illegal, but they're still dangerous. So I've kind of transitioned into teaching the general public what are some traits and some techniques that problematic people engage in so you can spot them. And once you are able to identify them, you literally see the world in a different way. And that's why I partnered with Ryan, and our two disciplines come together very well. And we're happy to give this presentation today on the topic of love bombing because we literally received hundreds of emails asking to go through the topic of love bombing. So we're going to talk about it we're going to talk about it from the standpoint of what are the techniques, what are the signs of it, and clear up some, miscommunications because a lot of people think love bombing might just be man towards woman, but that's not true. It's all the way around. It's just different techniques. So we're going to be talking about the full gamut of it. All right, and we're going to go ahead and get started. So one of the processes, and this is the most consistent trait of a love bomber, is they entangle you with excitement. And it's that concept of excitement, that concept of giving somebody tons of admiration, tons of attention, ton of praise. So in the beginning, when we're just dealing with people, I don't care if this is a romantic relationship, a business relationship, when you're just going out and meeting people, you have to be very aware of disproportionate levels of attention based off the access that you've gave to that person. If you've only talked to that person 3 or 4 hours, they don't know about your habits. They don't know about your family. They don't know about your vices. This person should not be like all in love with you. That's a disproportionate reaction. And what we want to become very aware of is people showing disproportionate levels of interest to us based off of the amount of information we've given them. Let me know if you want to add anything to that, Ryan.
Nope,
Okay.
spot on.
Okay. So when we think of love bombing, what I look at it is time skipping. And time skipping is a technique heavily used by pimps, heavily used by child molesters, heavily used by people in human trafficking. And what they're trying to do is they're condensing the amount of time it takes for you to trust them. In general, we should be giving trust in a proportionate level to the knowledge you have to someone. But time skipping, what it does is it convinces you to trust someone based on small amounts of information. A perfect example is doctors wear lab coats and they wear white. So there's a tendency to trust this person even though you really don't know who this person is, and medical mistakes are the third leading cause of deaths in America. You're much more likely to be killed by your doctor than a gangster. But subconsciously, we look at a doctor and think, oh, this person is inherently safe. This pastor is inherently safe. And what we want to do is realize if somebody hasn't given us proper information, I shouldn't trust them off the bat. Now we're going to go into. So these are three of the most popular books on manipulation. Way of the Wolf is a very, very popular book on sales. Whole Tactics is one of the most popular books right now on dating. If you go on Amazon right now, this is a book that's created to show women how to manipulate men out of their resources. The
I would
game.
like a number 6 with a large Diet Coke with light ice. That will be it.
Okay, we're gonna have to mute you because we're not at McDonald's yet, but we're going. The Game is an extremely popular book on how to sleep with women. Now, if you've read any of these three books, well, I have because I'm a criminologist, is it's always the same tactics. So these tactics work regardless of whether you're trying to sell insurance to somebody, get them to take out a loan on their house, or get them to sleep with you. So that's why it's extremely important to start learning these tactics. So this is the point of this. Why love bombing is grooming. So this is the 6 steps to groom somebody. First is target selection. The next is gaining access to and trust. Next is filling a void. Next is boundary testing. Next, you need security and isolation. Then you have the sexual contact / exploitation. So I've done thousands of cases. At the end of the day, they all had this same concept. So scouting the lot, target selection. Where did we get this picture from? Was it Matilda? Yeah, Matilda.
That
So
looks like it.
yeah. So I want you to think of the slimy car salesman. And how does this person notice a target? What are they looking for? What do they notice? And one of the things they're looking for is they're looking for people with low boundaries. They're looking for people that have problems, and they're looking for people that are susceptible to being moved. So if you're on a car lot and you don't know much about the vehicle you're trying to buy, if you don't really know what the market price is, if you've never actually went to a credit union or a bank to see what kind of loan you get approved of, you've set yourself up to be an easy victim because the car salesman now has full range to create a reality that might not actually be true. And this is what they look for, especially like when I go shopping for cars, they hate me because I do hours and hours and hours of research. And they can't tell me anything. And I come in there with my own financing. So I don't need them. And that's powerful is when we're out in the world. I don't care whether you're doing personal relationships, romantic relationships. We need to be aware of our triggers. We need to be aware of our wounds and be aware of how we're coming across to other people. So next is the emotional test drive, love bombing / false report. So what they will often do is they will mirror your values. They will mirror your pain points. They will smile when you smile. They will make you feel like you're the center of the universe. As you craft the story of your life, they will be what you need them to be in that moment. But one of the things to realize is, am I dealing with a mirror or am I dealing with a person? Is this person just telling me what they want to hear, what I want to hear, and it helps them get what they want? Or am I having a real conversation? Because a real conversation is give and take. Sometimes I'm going to agree. Sometimes I'm not going to agree. Sometimes I'm going to bring in a different point of view. And that's why humility is extremely important. And the fact when we're out in the dating world, we should be, to the best of our ability, be out there healed. Because when we're not healed, when we're having conversations with strangers, we should really be having with professionals. We often overshare. We often talk too much, and we're looking for comfort. And that gives people a way to comfort us. Now, the problem is we don't know where that comfort is coming from. Is that comfort coming to help us or to help control us? Okay. Next part, limited time offer, creating urgency. So this is where the person is starting to move us in a certain direction. It's called a comfort test. They're trying to move us in a certain direction, and they're letting us know that the time horizon has to be shortened. And one of the ways people do this, oh, hey, I gotta leave now. I'm not really sure. I'm about to head out. And instead of being reasonable and saying, hey, why don't we exchange numbers? The person might say, hey, let me transport you to another location. If it was a car salesman, they would say the car is in high demand, the price won't last. When 9 times out of 10, with the car they're selling ain't that special. You can find it somewhere else if you looked around. So we need to be aware of when time is being used against us, because it's really hard to use our defenses properly when we feel like there is a time delay. Like shopping, like so much of diamonds, so much of items that are for sale, they're artificially inflated in price because people are withholding the supply, but for them withholding the supply, there'll be plenty of them. So this next slide might be jarring to people if they don't understand how this game works, but this is a quick app that it's been online for like 15 years. So this app is created to help someone manipulate someone in real time. So this is before AI. I'm pretty sure this app came out in like 2007, 2009, and it's like $60. If you go on the Apple store right now, you just type in got pickup lines, this will be the app you find. And you will find this app has thousands of ways to communicate with somebody. If so, what you do is you say what that person said, and then it will give you a response. Now, notice the steps on the side. The most important thing to notice is comfort test and compliance test. Now, I saw this in criminology all the time, where if you can give somebody comfort, you can often get them to comply to all sorts of things they wouldn't normally comply to. So, one thing I want you to think about when you're off this call and when you're just living your life, when you feel comfortable around somebody, I want you to really think, why do I feel comfortable about them? Is this based on people's words or based on somebody's actions and their resume where I know real facts about them? Because in my personal opinion, based off my professional career, words are most often used to hide who people really are. It's not really used as a real form of connection, especially with strangers. It takes on average 3 to 6 months to get to know somebody. And on the Patreon, I'm going to talk about a way I used to evaluate people. It's called the 3-6 rule. It's either 3 to 6 months, 3 to 6 extremely important interactions, or 3 to 6 other people evaluating that person. So I do not give trust to people until they reach my 3-6 rule. We'll talk more about that later, but just letting people know this is part one of going to be a 3-part series, because there's so much to talk about on this. There's just so much to talk about, so much that you can't fit into in like an hour presentation. Okay, next is the emotional debt phase, emotional entrapment. And one of the things to realize is when we've brought somebody into our life, I don't care if they're a friend, if they're a business colleague, if it's a new job. After you bring them into your life, every now and then you need to do a deep dive of your emotional state and say, has my life gotten better or worse since I brought them in my life? And if the reason is worse, the question is why? And what often happens is people will ensnare their emotional debt into our lives. And then we start looking at their debt as our debt. Happens all the time in these relationships. So a guy will connect himself to a woman, say, I'm having all these problems, I'm having all these, and next thing you know, his problems are her problems. Or on the flip side, you bring a woman into your life, she has problematic exes, you have problems with money, and next thing you know, you barely know this person, and you're taking out a second mortgage to take care of her. And these people likely did not actually explain their circumstance before you became entangled with them. And it's very hard to untangle ourselves from problematic people. And that's why we need to be very careful bringing problematic people in our life. Now, if we want to do that because we're extremely empathetic, that's fine. But just make sure you have some boundaries. And you need to have boundaries you never negotiate. You never negotiate your non-negotiables. I think, Ryan, is this where you've come in, or is it the next one?
Probably the next one.
Okay. So this is the lemon reveal the evaluation. So after people that are problematic love bomb us and they're in our life, what we notice was first emotional withdrawal. The individual suddenly pulls away or becomes distant, leaving you confused and uncertain about your value. Because now at that point, now they're driving the car. I'm a big believer that uncertainty shows that somebody is a problematic person. Like people should not be leaving you confused. Confused is actually a very dangerous mindset, and that's a sign you're dealing with somebody that's not communicating with you in good faith. Second, lack of support. After achieving their goal, they provide no help or reassurance, similar to vanishing after a transaction. That's the good, that's the typical uh person seems all interested. They sleep with you and then they never call you again. Well, because that was the goal. The goal was to sleep. It wasn't to actually have a long-term relationship. Or on the flip side, this could be a friend or quote unquote friend that seems to really be interested in you, but what there really is, they need $500 to pay their rent. So you give them that $500, and then for some reason they don't pick up the phone anymore because they got the transaction, but they pretended like the actual reason for contacting was a connection. Transaction versus connection. Third is transactional treatment. You are treated as just another transaction, leading to disappointment and diminished sense of worth. And this is what happens. I came across this a lot of times when I was dealing with crimes against children. If so many of the children looked at themselves as the reason for their victimization. And now that I'm working primarily with adults, a lot of adults look at them as primarily it's their fault for being victimized. But if we just don't understand how problematic people operate, then it's just ignorance. And they're at the end of the day, as people, we are constantly finding out new things. And ignorance is something to learn. It's not something to beat ourselves over the head with. Like I'm constantly finding out, even though I do this for a living, I'm constantly finding out new ways problematic people scam other individuals. And I'm blown away by my ignorance on a weekly basis, but I continue to learn. And likewise, we will try to continue to learn because these people, they don't have jobs. Their jobs full time is manipulating others. That's what they got their PhDs in. So that's why we have to constantly get better and better at noticing their problems and noticing that they are a problem. So this is the protection strategy before I switch this over to Ryan. It's take your time. Trust built quickly can crash just as fast. Consult outsiders, friends, family, mentors before making deep commitments. And if you don't have friends, family, and mentors that you trust, then that needs to be on the list of something that you get. Because without them, it's like we're flying blind. Like, even though me and Ryan knew this for a living, I have an entire network of other people that I consult with because we all have these blind spots, and these blind spots have a way of blinding us. Next is watch for urgency, flattery, and pressure. They are not love, they're tactics, especially pressure. When somebody's trying to get you to do something that you don't want to do, right now we have an incongruency between them saying they care about us and then them not respecting our boundaries. And I always say, go by their actions, not by their words. Next is learn to spot manipulation as a sales process, not a soulmate encounter. So when somebody's trying to sell themselves to you, watch out for that. Because especially in 2025, people should be wary of each other. We should have a certain amount of wariness to each other before we bring people into our lives. I mean, 50% of divorces end, 50% of marriages end in divorce. And my argument is probably another 30% of them are just people are just with each other, but they're not moving in a direction of happiness. So, based on these facts, if somebody's just willing to just bring you into their life off one or two interactions, that's something to watch. Is not necessarily this person is manipulative, but they might not be good at making good decisions. And that's important. And so I want you to think of your mind as a fortress and that you have a small doorway. And you need to always stand at the doorway of your mind and be very careful of what kind of ideas and thoughts people are allowed to just walk right into your world. But with that, I'm switching over to Ryan.
Thank you, Terrence. Could you go back 2 slides for me real quick?
Yeah, but you owe me a coffee then.
That's fine. One thing I wanted to point out about this is this often happens, this reveal of emotional withdrawal from the person who showed you so much attention, so much love, and a lack of support, and treating it like a transaction, like Terrence said, often happens at the end with somebody who's got something out of you. But more importantly, sometimes this also happens with somebody who may not be grooming you, but is just a manipulator. And this can be a tactic to test your boundaries and see whether you have enough self-esteem to say, you know what, I don't like this and I'm done with this person, or whether you keep sending them texts asking them how they're doing and where they are and if everything's okay. And they will read them and they will ignore them and they will smile. So sometimes this is also part of testing your boundaries. And you just got to ask yourself at this point, is what they're doing reasonable? And is there a legitimate excuse? And even if you could give them the benefit of the doubt, is this the way that you would like your relationship to move forward? And if it's not, then this person isn't the end all be all. Because at the end of the day, if you and this person do not agree on how you should be treated, then it should not be a relationship you should be considering in a healthy manner going forward. Next slide, Terrence. When it comes to urgency, flattery, and pressure, one of the comments I have, other than Terrence, you do so well at being concise, man, absolutely amazing,
Appreciate you, man.
is depending on what culture you're from, depending on where you are on the process or people's different ways of flirting. By the way, you can look up many psychological studies that shows most of the population has no idea when somebody else is flirting with them. And we keep talking about, oh, they gave me this signal, gave me that signal. Most of the time it's mixed signals because there isn't any culturally, for the most part, just basic understood way of doing something like flirting unless you come from a very conservative type of background or environment, whether it be religious, whether it be some ethnic practices. So when it comes to flattery, again, is it due depending on the type of relationship you've already built with them? Meaning, wherever you are in this process, is there enough information that they've given me? Is there enough trust built that I understand this person is being genuine and that they actually have a reason to be interested in me? Or did I just meet them off the street and they're trying to flatter me as if we've known each other for, 10 years? That's really the question we want to ask. Next slide, Terrence. So I've said this before, and we've kind of touched on both of these in separate events, but just because somebody has charisma, just because they have the ability to flatter you or that they're easy to talk to, that charisma isn't a connection with them. Because the charisma is simply the ability to make conversation and do so in a way that makes another person feel important and comfortable. But that does not mean you have a genuine connection with that other person. There are many people who are introverts that don't have charisma. That doesn't mean that they can't have a true deep connection with somebody else. So I just want people to think about that. I want you all to think about it. Just because somebody's easy to talk to and they make me feel good doesn't mean I know anything about them. I know enough about them. It doesn't mean that we have a same or similar thought process. It doesn't mean we can anticipate finishing each other's sentences or that we even have similar goals in life. It has nothing to do with a connection. It makes a connection easier, but that doesn't mean you have one. The next part is about chemistry, and it goes along with that charisma. If they have a great charisma and you pick up on it, and now you are in conversations together, you're having fun, you might be having drinks together, you might be going on multiple dates, you might have fun with them, sharing experiences. That is a form of the chemistry between your personality, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you, in your long-term goals, in your search for a relationship, it does not mean that you two are compatible. So just like people could be best friends for years until they talk religion or politics, it's the same thing with relationships. You could have chemistry with somebody, but it does not mean that they are in the same path and same purpose and willing to do it the same way as you are. So we need to be careful about hopping into something just because the rest of life seems to be so easy with them. So charisma isn't necessarily a connection, and the chemistry you have someone doesn't mean that you are compatible. Now, with that being said, if you have a true connection and you do have true compatibility, charisma and chemistry makes things so much easier. It's just sometimes we get lulled into a sense of the emotional point and putting our emotional compatibility first and kind of racing to the finish line before even starting at the starting line. So just like that time skipping that Terrence was talking about that groomers do, we need to be very careful about getting attached at an emotional level and skipping all the things that we're supposed to do because we get too drawn to their charisma or too drawn to our chemistry with them. Next slide. So, um, I've heard from many people we're concerned about some of the actions that we've been talking about, like showing sincere interest in somebody that, hey, that's not necessarily love bombing. Somebody might be genuinely interested in other people. That might be their true intentions is that they truly believe in the beauty of other people and want to let them know. And I am not here to say that everyone is a problem or that those people are dangerous. But what I'm here to say is, from your standpoint, how are you going to tell the difference between that person being genuine or using it as a strategy to get to you? If somebody who looks like they could kill you knocks on your door at 2 or 3 in the morning and tries to convince you that they need to come in your house, and you want to believe in the bottom of your heart that they're a genuinely good person, how can you tell the difference between them being a murderer and wanting to kill you versus they actually really just needed your help? And if you can't tell the difference, that is my point entirely. So it is not about that there are some people who are genuine people, and that it is all about, in this process, does the amount of attention they're giving me and does the way that they're speaking to me, the way they're trying to flatter me, the way they're trying to gain and earn my respect and my loyalty and my effort, is it due? Does it make sense for the type of experiences we've built together already, or does it feel like we're jumping the gun? And if they are a genuine person who doesn't understand this process, and they might be jumping the gun, time skipping, the easiest thing to do is set a boundary. Easiest thing to do. And if they're a problematic person, they can't handle that boundary and they leave. And you just got rid of you got rid of your you got rid of a problematic situation for yourself. Wonderful. If they are a genuine person, then they need to start respecting those boundaries. And that means that whatever process you're going through and you're setting up, they need to follow that with you. And if you do disagree, it's okay. Then perhaps you're not meant to be with each other. And that's okay too, because at the end, we need to understand how to build those relationships from the beginning and maintain them. And if we skip steps and we ignore potential problems and risks, then all we're doing is asking for them to come up worse than they would have been at the beginning, far into the future. So this photo is from a movie called Sinners, and it has been quite popular recently. So just like you have the main character who ends up, um, spoilers by the way, the main character who ends up going to a party that he should never have been at because he was a good, loyal churchgoer with the father who's a pastor. He ends up in a horrible situation where people are smiling at him and telling him that everything's going to be okay, yet that there are people coming after to kill him and turn him into a monster. So when somebody's in front of you and they're smiling you and they're telling you to follow them and everything's going to be okay, does it matter whether they're genuine or not? Or does it matter that you can determine? And if you cannot determine which one it is, then we need to be careful. Next slide. So when it comes to love, when it comes to a long-lasting relationship, we need to understand how to build those foundations. And those foundations with somebody is we need to build and maintain a shared set of goals. We need to work towards them together in a way that is positive and collaborative. We need to build that teamwork through those shared experiences. We need to celebrate our triumphs and we need to pull each other up when we're failing or we're trying to figure out how to move forward. And we always have to have the right intention. And somebody who's grooming, somebody who's a manipulator, is going to try and corrupt each one of these stages. They're either going to try and convince you to follow their goal, they're going to try and convince you to do a lot of the work. They're going to try and convince you that an experience that really wasn't helpful, like a car salesman, is the best thing in the world. And more importantly, they're going to try and sell you their intention. But at each stage, if you take a little bit of time and question them, especially about their intentions or their actions, you'll realize that things don't line up. And Terrence can tell you a lot about when interrogating somebody. And I say interrogation may be a strong word, but questioning somebody and looking at their story, how to tell when things don't line up.
Yeah, I'm just gonna throw in there
So,
real quick,
yep.
just real quick, so you brought it out there, is that most people don't have much depth to their ability to lie. So they don't plan out their lie well enough. It's like even politicians, just with a quick 10 to 20 minute search, you can literally find so much of their lies. And it's because when you get in the habit of lying, it's exhausting to constantly retract those steps. That's why the more information you have about somebody, the easier it is to figure out what they're about, especially when you make them go back and forward with different parts of their story. So if I ask you, what are some of the key decisions you've made over the last 3 years and why did you make them? If you've lived a shady life, now I'm making you pull into a fantasy jar of facts. Now you have to remember each one of those facts you give me. So in general, people that are actually being real, they have a lot to glean from. People that are being fake, they can't talk that much. Al Capone the gangster had a really good quote. If you're going to lie, keep it brief. And that's what was always noticeable to me when I would interrogate people is the truth flows easy. Lies are compartmentalized. So when you're interviewing 7 people about the same incident, the person that's telling the truth, they're usually very open. It's the person that's lying that their story doesn't make sense. And it was always fun, without talking too much, is once you put these people in prison. Now, some of the best people at noticing predators are other predators. So once you put these people in prison and the other prisoners found out what they were in jail for or in prison for, there's their own form of justice. I've talked to many people and I looked them in the eye and I said, you're not going to survive 2 weeks, right? So if whatever your eulogy is going to be, you better give it to me because once they put you in general population, you're a dead man. And just that kind of understanding of finality that there's no point in lying to me because regardless of how this situation plays out, they're going to kill you. They often started just telling because they once you see through the veil, people are in general more likely to just choose another victim. The three most likely victims of all crime are children, women, and the elderly. So in general, those and it's individuals that are very trusting. Like, without going too far, we'll cover some other stuff in the next part too. Go ahead, Ryan. Sorry about that.
No, don't apologize. Terrence has worked with people where their consequence may be physical death. And I've worked with people in companies where their consequences is financial death.
Mm.
So when I'm talking with other companies and we're trying to see whether we're going to be a good fit to work together on a contract, a potential opportunity, you got to size people up. And the easiest way is, can they build out a story that is easily that I can follow easily, and every time I check in with them, it hasn't changed drastically. And what ends up happening is when they cannot put the story together and they cannot tell you about their intentions and the story keeps changing, one of the companies I worked with found out very quick, oh, they were using us to win a contract and then cut us out of it with the power they had bidding as a prime. And what you find out is those companies, those people build that reputation very quickly, and inevitably it becomes financial death and financial ruin. And they can't work with anybody except the absolutely desperate. Then what happens? They prey on the desperate. So one of the motifs, the reoccurring themes is, and Terrence talked about earlier, that emotional void. Anybody who's desperate is a very easy target. So even if we're not where we want to be and we're still working on it, even if we want the marriage of our dreams, a relationship to work out just to find somebody, maybe we haven't had, a good track record for a time. One of the biggest things is let's not betray our own progress by trying to skip the steps because we romanticize the opportunity in front of us. Let's just take the time to make sure that everything falls in place properly because entertainment is cheap, but happiness is earned. Anything that doesn't require a lot of effort, that doesn't require understanding and really taking apart a situation or planning is going to be entertainment. These are the ads that you see. Ads on your phone, ads on Spotify, ads on YouTube, ads on the radio, anything that is just quickly meant to grab your attention, entertainment. Unfortunately, a lot of people end up getting into relationships because they seem fun and they're entertaining. But without the effort of shared goals, teamwork, experiences, the right intention, loyalty, and commitment, we won't reach happiness because the happiness comes from triumphing over shared obstacles together, building that loyalty, building that trust in a way that makes sense, where every time you look at them, you look at this person, you look at your relationship, you have a reason that you're with them. And that reason makes you happy and it makes you secure. And no matter how many times somebody tries to convince you with emotion that it's not working, you can say, I don't have to worry about the fact that I have an emotional attachment because I've got everything else, every other reason, every other shared experience of why I'm emotionally attached to this person too. And that's true happiness. And I see it in the faces of many people that I've worked with, that they have built up that loyalty, but it's been through entertainment and they're not truly happy. Next slide. So I'm going to say this, and it might be a little bit controversial to some people, but true love is built. And the longer you're with somebody who is a healthy companion to you with the same goals, same experiences, same morals, what should be happening is this love should be getting stronger over time. That with every new shared experience, you have a new, larger, increased, stronger appreciation for them and vice versa. So whether you believe in true love at first sight or not, or whether you, however long you think it should take to really be with somebody and know it's time to get married, no matter what your timetable is from a cultural, religious perspective, wherever you start out, true love, true commitment is built on a daily basis, and that connection should be getting stronger. And of course, there are going to be times where you might feel like it stagnates. That's life. Or you might feel like there are rough patches. That's fine. But the average course over a few months to a year, we should see that we're working together for shared goals in a shared similar process, and that we are getting closer and stronger year by year. And somebody who's a manipulator, somebody who's a groomer, will not put the same amount of effort, physical effort, into it. They will trick you through emotional effort. They will think that what you're getting from them as emotional attention is this effort that they're putting in to build the relationship. But that emotional effort is just a shortcut. So part of the trust that we build in the beginning of this process is, without emotions, can I trust you? Can I rely on you? And when I ask you to do something, or when we need to plan a date, does this person put in the effort? Do they show up when I need them? Do they put the same type of effort and reciprocate the way that I do? Or do they try and trick me, or explain why they don't need to put in the same amount of effort, and why you're so amazing and you're so wonderful and you're such a catch because you do all this work? Well, they might be right. You might be wonderful and you might be an amazing catch, and they're not the person for you because they don't do the same that you do. So this is about understanding the signs of manipulators and groomers, and understanding a sense of self-worth and self-esteem, and where we can put those boundaries. Because true love is built, and it is built over time, and it gets stronger over time. And a manipulator and a groomer is not going to build it. They are going to trick you into thinking that you need to do everything. And that's where we need to really look at somebody's actions. Next slide, Terrence. This is the end of the recorded section for today, and what Terrence and I have to present to you guys. We wanted to thank all, it looks like 145, 147 of you who showed up today on a wonderful Saturday afternoon. And we also wanted to thank a lot of our returning guests. We see a lot of familiar faces and familiar names, and we're really excited to continue forward our community. Terrence, you want to tell them a little bit more about the book?
Yep. So what we just talked about was chapter 6 from the book me, Ryan, and Michaela are writing about relationships. So we just took some snippets from the book. We couldn't put everything because obviously the book is big, but if you like that information, the book that it's coming from, it'll be available right around August to September, and we're going to go into more depth. Also, the Patreon, we've included some documents like the 20 most common phrases of love bombing manipulation and why it's a problem. So that's on the Patreon. I'm going to be uploading that within the next 30 minutes. 30 minutes after I end everything. And along with some other handouts. Shout outs to the pledge donors. We appreciate the people that, gave us some coffee money. Coffee's here. Haha, Ryan, you can't get coffee.
Fine with me.
Again, we appreciate it because, those donations keep us going. Next, we appreciate the Patreon. We're up to 140 members. The YouTube is 200. We don't plan to be going anywhere. We plan to be here year after year, putting out as much information as possible. And you guys tell us what you want to see. So if we get enough interest, then we go ahead and make a presentation on it. So the next event's coming up is How to Choose a Man, a strategic dating event for women in 2025. I'm going to show you how I, as a profiler, profile men. Ryan can do it as well because Ryan has to profile men all the time for business contacts. Like if somebody's acting like they run a 7 or 8 figure company, but they're really at home in their mom's basement watching South Park all day, we need to know that. And I'm going to show you how I profile people very, pretty accurately. And this is kind of going to be the way men look at other men a lot of times because it doesn't usually take long for men to size up other men. And we're going to go into what to look for, questions, statements, but as well as like the mindset, such as when does a man go from reckless to reliable? What does that sort of look like? Because a lot of times we connect ourselves to people who legitimately don't have the skill set to be in a committed relationship. They just don't have it. It's like you gave the reins to a CFO to somebody that doesn't know how to run a business. So they're always going to run you into the ground. Next, we're going to have another event. It's called He Learned the Game Young, How Pokemon Hustling and Risk Shaped Modern Men. And this is really important to me. I know it's important to Ryan as well. And a lot of other men can testify to this. We're going to talk about how so much content that has been veered towards men over the last 20 years has brought us in certain directions. From the fact that Pokemon had a gambling point of, there was a lot of gambling involved in Pokemon to where how modern video games shaped us to where even our love life, so much of the modern male love life is recreating the version of success that we've seen in video games and movies. And a lot of women just don't understand this. So like me, even with all my degrees and training, I'm basically living a life from a video game. Ryan, I would argue you're living a very similar life to like a Grand Theft Auto video game character as well. Tell me I'm wrong.
I would say before I learned how to be a man, it was more of a soap opera, and now
Yeah.
it's like a fun game.
Yeah,
But
exactly.
I, yep.
And that this kind of a lot of men haven't really sat back and thought to themselves like, "Hey, I'm really living like the movies and the video games I grew up on. Even how entertainment is done, how so much entertainment for men, millennial men and Gen Z men growing up was all high dopamine. So like I don't want to go to the golf course. There's not enough dopamine in that. I got to go racing cars or shooting guns. And there's all these influences that just doesn't get talked about enough that we're going to talk about. This is something else that we're going to get into is Holy Love or Hidden Control, a strategic guide to faith-based relationships. We're going to talk about ways that religion help relationships, but there's also specific problems that happen in religious relationships that people have to be on the watch out for. And I don't care if you're dealing with Islam, Christianity, Judaism, there's certain blind spots that people need to watch out for, especially women, because a lot of times I keep it real. People use religion to enforce the code of conduct they want on others versus use their religion as a way to manage their own behavior. So that's why it's extremely important to watch out for this because I'm going to go through the Ashley Madison scandal and stuff like that, as well as a lot of people that I've interrogated. I've interrogated a whole lot of clergymen. You know, it wasn't good for them, but I interrogated them. So we'll be going through all that great stuff. Now that is the end of our presentation. Let me go ahead and turn off the video as soon as I figure out how. Okay. Oh, it's